to the regular meeting of the Park and Rec Commission this Wednesday evening, September 3rd, 2025. I call this meeting to order. Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Recording secretary, please call the roll.
Yes. Chair Witcher,
Here.
Vice Chair Ocampo,
Here.
Commissioner Fields. Okay, Commissioner Chiappi. Here. Commissioner Chalk, and so Commissioner Fields is absent, and then we have Youth Commissioner Anna Polsky who is absent, and Youth Commissioner John Kern.
Here.
All right. We are holding meetings in person. If you're interested in speaking during public comment, please complete a request to speak form and submit it to the recording secretary. The forms are
Right up here.
right there in yellow. The first item tonight, we have a certificate
Ooh.
for recognizing Youth Commissioner Thomas Jelniker for his service on the Park and Recreation Commission. As I hand this to you, I will say myself that it is a real pleasure, has been a pleasure. Your service here is valuable, and it has been truly valuable to us to get a voice from a different generation and from one that looks more to the future than we do.
Thank you so much. Can I say something really quick?
Absolutely.
I should have read the certificate.
Oh, you can still read it now.
Let me put my glasses. I can read the certificate
You want to?
if you would like me to.
You know, I'm maybe later, but I just I have some things I could say. I'm like deeply honored to be or to have been a part of this for I think 2 years. That's insane. I really just want to shout out to my mom in the audience. I would have never applied for the position in the first place if she hadn't just told me to risk it all and to take a gamble, and I'm so glad I did because I get to be with these awesome people every month. I want to thank my fellow commissioners, all you guys over here, but sorry, I'm getting really
You're doing
emotional.
great. You're doing great.
Means you care.
Yeah.
To my wonderful boss. I mean, technically you're my boss, but I mean, you're more of like a friend. My wonderful boss, Joanne, she wrote my letter of one of my letters of rec for college, and she's just been like a really amazing person to rely on and to just lean on. But I especially want to thank my family and my friends, and really you may remember her, Youth Commissioner Serene Lee, for just, helping, inspiring me to be a better commissioner. And I really just, I really want to take a moment to just like, sorry, I was just like, I had something prepared in my head and I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And I guess, well, she's not here, Dahlia, but I have full faith that the youth commissioners in this, not just in this commission, but in all the other commissions the city has to offer, will do an impeccable job. But it's been an honor and I'm excited to see what's to come. Thank you for the opportunity.
I just would like to say something too, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
You are a trailblazer. You are one of the city's first 2 youth commissioners ever.
Oh my God.
So you really set the stage, and I think that you've just done a wonderful job. Your participation has been truly inspiring, and I think we're lucky to be one of the first commissions to have youth commissioners as the pilot program, and as you said, have rolled out to other commissions. So thank you for your service, and we'll miss you.
Wonderful. Any quick comments?
Yes, I'll just say, just to echo what Joanne said, really we piloted youth commissioners in the Parks and Rec Commission, and Commissioner Jolniker brought some light and some youth perspective and a little bit of humor to the commission, something that I try to prioritize as well. And I just want to say thank you, and I wish you all the best in Susanna Cruz.
Thank you.
Of course.
Wonderful. I'll close by saying I have been and will continue to be a strong advocate of youth commissioners. Your participation really has been valuable. You ask better questions than I do. There's a value add, which might not be hard. It's immediate value add. Wonderful. Let's move on to item number 2. That's approving the minutes of the August regular meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Chair Witcher?
Aye.
Vice Chair Ocampo?
Hi.
Commissioner Trump?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
I would also like to vote yes.
2 + 2 is 5.
I'd also like the record to state that I am in fact present for this meeting. Thank you.
Wonderful. Let's move on. The next item on the agenda is public comment. So any members of the public who want to comment on any item that is not on the agenda can address the commission now. State law prevents us from taking action on a matter that is not on the publicly published agenda. Your comments be referred to staff for follow-up. Public comments limited to a total of 15 minutes. However, an opportunity for additional public comment may be provided later in the agenda. Do we have anyone wishing to give public comment?
Chair Witcher, we have no public commenters at this time.
Great. Recording secretary indicates there are no public comments, so we'll move on to item number 3. This is the capital improvement projects update. This is informational. We will not be taking a vote on it. Please come up. Steve.
Yes.
Facilities Fleet Services Manager from Public Works. It's yours.
Good evening, everybody. I must say I haven't heard from you guys in a while, so I figured I'd drop in. Last time I was here, maybe over a year ago, you promised to ask a lot of questions as the years went by, as the time went through, but then I actually didn't receive any, so I felt that you missed me so much, I decided to come back and give you another presentation. So first project on the slideshow is the Central Recreation roof improvements. So Central Recreation roof has been maintained or sort of maintained for over maybe 50 years now. And we determined recently that it could no longer be maintained and had to be replaced. And so this project went through a design process, was awarded in August at the council meeting, and will probably start in a couple of weeks, and we should be completed within the month of October. We plan on keeping the facility open during construction, so none of the services are just disrupted. Next one, the emergency field lighting upgrade. So we're starting with at King Park. The purpose of this project is to install lighting for use during power outages. And so if anybody's been there at night during a power outage, you'll notice that it's pitch black. So the purpose is to install lights along the pathway to guide somebody out of the park if necessary. Currently, we are in a bidding process to bid out the project itself. Construction should start sometime in late fall, early winter. Emergency generator upgrades, we're also starting at the King Center. The purpose of this project is to install a backup generator hookup to the electrical room. In case of a power outage, we can run a temporary generator up to this pad here to connect for backup power. At the King Center, this location, it's more pronounced. We actually poured a concrete pad and put up bollards there, so it almost looks like a parking stall. But it is for the purpose of the generator. The future for this capital improvements project does involve other locations such as Beresford Senior Center, maybe the Central Rec Center as well. Those might be less pronounced, but that would be forthcoming. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Recreation Center Resiliency Center Project. So this project kind of ties into the next one in a way. The city was approved for, or pre-approved for a grant, a federal grant in the amount of $850,000 last year. The city council approved for us to move forward with that grant application. And so currently we're going through the process of the application, which requires environmental review, requires a design, a scope, and pretty much a purpose for this resilience center for the board to be considered for this grant application. Currently, we have an environmental consultant aboard, and we are currently going through the information gathering stage. And we have an RFP that's actually due tomorrow for a program manager to manage this entire project to help assemble the team. The team should consist of architects, engineers, maybe arborists. It's basically all of the typical consultants required for a major project such as this one. In terms of timeline, this is more or less a 3-phase project that may go through the course of 4 to 5 years when all is said and done. So the King and Joinville pool improvement. So this project was also divided into 3 phases. City Council had approved $900,000 sometime at the beginning of this year or end of last year to basically address all 3 phases or some parts of all 3 phases. The first phase was accomplished in the springtime, and the purpose was to handle all of the immediate action items, such as getting the pools up and running just for the summer. Phase 2 is to take it a little bit further and make improvements to the facilities themselves so the pools will last another 3 to 5 years. And phase 3 is more the long-term vision. So for the King Center, for example, it would be the pool improvements / resiliency center. For Joinville, that is up for discussion because currently, after phase 1 was accomplished, we discovered that there were issues with the pool itself in terms of additional leaks, mechanical failures, things like that, that may not be worth fixing in the long term. And so that is something that we have to discuss in-house to determine the value of phase 2. Gateway Park Bridge replacement. So this is a prefabricated bridge that is sort of beyond its useful life. There's rust forming at certain connections, and the project is not necessarily, or the bridge is not salvageable. So plans are in place to prefabricate a new bridge and to be installed or prefabricated in the winter and installed in the spring of 2026. I believe that's it for today.
Great, thank you. This is time for a public comment. Any public comment or questions on Steve's presentation? not, then I'll move to commissioners' questions and comments. We'll take those both together. And I will start with Youth Commissioner Jelniker.
I wanna thank you for your presentation. I don't have any questions or comments at this time. Maybe circle back to me later, if that's okay.
Sure,
I have some questions, it's my turn.
it is your turn.
Excellent, sorry, I was getting ahead. I was assuming you were going in across the table.
Indeed, I am being logical that way.
Thank you, I appreciate that. You were trained well as a chair.
I'm an engineer,
Um,
was.
okay. The Central Park Rec Center, does it meet ADA standards and are we in a place where if it doesn't, does the re-roofing trigger any kind of need for upgrades around ADA?
So regarding the ADA situation, it met ADA standards in the past.
Okay,
Currently with a ADA transition plan,
with a what's, oh, an ADA
a
transition plan.
citywide ADA transition plan that also mentions Central Park in general.
Mm-hmm,
And it notes all of the deficiencies that don't meet today's code. But
Okay.
through the reasonable accommodation policy, I believe, we are exempt from doing a full ADA improvement plan.
okay,
The roof replacement project in itself is a maintenance project.
okay,
And so it's direct replacement in kind, so it doesn't trigger
Got it.
anything else. If we were to do an interior remodel, for example, or improve the restrooms or things similar to additions, then something like that would be triggered.
so it's upgrades that would trigger it, not just maintaining it as it is.
That's correct.
Got it, okay. And, you know, with all of our rec centers, they were all sort of built out frankly before I was born. And I'm turning a monumental age at the end of this year. So without making it about me, I'm curious what other kind of maintenance needs are there across our different rec centers? Are we needing to be thinking about roofing across all of these facilities?
Right, so part of the facilities program that we've created over the last few years help consolidate all of the different projects into one budget, for example. And so we have the citywide roof replacement project that also involves Beresford and Shoreview and even City Hall, as well as the senior center as well. So we're starting with Central Rec Center because we felt it was the highest priority.
Okay.
Based on just a general assessment, a citywide condition assessment.
And do we use the same contractor for all roofing? Do we get a deal out of that?
Not necessarily. We did not pursue a master contract is
Okay,
basically what you're referring to. We're doing it on a project by project basis
Okay.
for the time being. If you notice, all of the roofs throughout the city are almost completely different
Mhm.
and kind of particular to the design or the actual rec centers themselves. So
Sure.
it would be difficult to sign that master contract
it.
for somebody to be able to handle that, all the different varieties of roofs that we deal with.
We had solar panels as an issue that came before us at Beresford. I know solar panels have been an issue in other public spaces. I'm curious if there's any opportunities for solar panels and battery storage as part of either the emergency lighting or emergency generator options.
Wait, you mean on top of the,
Like to
Facilities
use,
or-
yeah, to put in solar panels and then to have any kind of energy storage as part of that process.
right, so the city always explores, sustainability
Uh-huh.
and efficiency with solar or any other types of I forgot the word, of resiliency in a
Sure.
way. And so whether it's on the building or not, currently, because of the maintenance issues, we've been trying to avoid immediate improvements such as those,
Okay.
especially when they're attached to the building. For instance, at Beresford, we decided to have a solar array in a parking lot
Right.
versus on top of the building because of the existing condition of the roof itself. However, in the future, once all these roofs are maintained properly, we should be more willing to to penetrate.
Sure, okay,
the
so this is
actual
kind of an
river
order of
rates.
operations challenge.
Most likely, yeah.
Okay. I think two more questions. One is, can you just tell me like what a resiliency center is?
Yes, it's, to put it simply, it's a place of refuge.
Okay.
During emergencies, even, it's not necessarily a center. Resiliency hubs or programs
Uh-huh.
rely on multiple locations in a given area to provide shelter for those who've been through a natural disaster, for example. Not necessarily, it doesn't have to be a huge natural disaster, it's actually for individuals as well.
Okay,
So people that are that might have lost their home or have a hardship of some sort.
sure. So like any kind of temporary displacement, someone could
Exactly,
go to a site like this.
right.
Okay,
It's also utilized for like cooling centers, warming centers,
Got
so, when there's extreme heat events or, extreme cold events,
Sure,
so
sure.
for those purposes as well.
okay. And then my last question, you had started to mention in your like laundry list of items kind of around the Resiliency Center project, I think, an arborist, and I'm curious, do we have an arborist working for the city? I know we used to, and I don't know if we do anymore. Or would this be a contracted arborist?
It would be a contractor arborist
Okay.
because the size and scale of what's required. And it's also best if the city contracts out a project of this size, just to have everything kind of consolidated,
Sure.
either under one program, where similar with design, typically we just don't have, the city itself doesn't have the staff or manpower to handle a project this large. And so we basically manage the overall contract. And then there are a bunch of consultants as a result.
So does the city no longer have?
No,
a
we do.
full-time- Oh,
So-
we
so,
do have
yeah,
an
we have
arborist, okay.
Actually, two full-time
Okay, great.
arborists, but even for the Central Park Playground project, we have a consulting arborist who's
Okay.
available to look at things associated with the project in a timely fashion.
Great,
Yeah.
Thank you.
So just real quick,
Please.
so anything submitted by the contracted arborist will be reviewed by the city arborist.
Great.
So,
So that's the oversight.
correct.
Cool. Thank you.
Vice Chair Ocampo.
Guess I'm next. So in regards to sustainability, I'm assuming that specifically the actual Resilient Center project has been designed with sustainability in mind, whatever that means, like energy efficiency and that kind of thing.
So the answer is yes.
Yes.
It is actually required by the code
Okay,
to follow all of those guidelines.
perfect.
But there has been no design yet, so
Right.
we have not designed the project, but that is the intention, is to include that in the design.
Perfect. And you mentioned that with the resiliency centers, there's multiple across
Sorry,
an area?
so that was a reference to a resiliency program. And so the center itself, King Center, for example, is probably going to be the first building that basically under our control that we can provide. A resiliency program involves other facilities as well. And so the long-term picture would be, in a perfect world, we would have other entities involved as well as part of that entire program.
And is that the long-term goal, I guess?
That is the long-term goal. We haven't really discussed it in detail yet, but that is what forms a true resiliency hub itself.
Okay, perfect. That makes sense. And in regards to the resiliency project, the center, you mentioned 4 to 5 years as a timeline. And I'm guessing the costs probably that's estimated today will be a little bit higher
Yes,
once we actually start, as it always is. Have we factored that into kind of the overall budget?
yes. And so there are multiple grant opportunities to help with that budget. But long-term, 4 to 5 years, honestly, we're thinking about maybe $20 million. And it's that size of a program.
Okay. I live near Joinville Pool, so I'm always very close to what's happening at that specific pool. I know that a couple years ago, I think it was probably before COVID, we did a survey and people were on site and doing surveys, and I remember I was part of that. I don't know if you remember that, is that still relevant? I don't know if you were here or if you remember that, but the information where there was community input in that, is that still relevant? Or are we still considering that feedback from the community, or are we gonna go ahead and get it again down the road?
So I wasn't here for that
It was a while
portion of
ago,
it,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I believe right now we're dealing with a lot of maintenance issues first, before we can even move forward to the next stage. I believe phase 3 would involve the public comment and involve the future planning for that location. Right now, we're in between phases 1 and 2, and we're not even sure about phase 2 because of the existing conditions that we found.
The additional damage and the leakage, yeah.
And I don't think at this point in time that there's intention behind changing the configuration of the pools because of the expense, right, tied to that. So we're just trying to get them back up and running so they can be used.
Usable.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
And there's a lease tied to the property adjacent, so the Joinville Park property is leased by the school district to us. So that lease expires in 15 years, so we don't wanna do any major renovations that could affect that lease.
When the lease
Yeah, when the
expires.
lease expires,
Right.
exactly.
Okay.
So
That makes sense. And in regards to just communication and with the actual community, guessing if there's anything that's gonna be affecting community, whether it's traffic or whatever, that's gonna be
Yes.
relayed via mail or whatever the mode of communication is
Yes, or through the commission.
through this here as well. Okay. Well, thank you for the presentation.
Right, Commissioner Kiapi.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I have two questions. One of them is just a curiosity question. So most of the capital improvement projects that you have mentioned today are in, I think, districts 3 and 4. I wonder whether that's because the facilities are older or it's for some, is there a specific reason why the projects that you mentioned, most of them are in district, I think, 3 and 4.
Right, that might be partly by chance, but most of those facilities, we feel that are in the highest priority, where if we don't do anything right now in terms of maintenance, then we may actually lose the building in the long run. And so obviously with deferred maintenance, costs end up going a lot higher if we address them later on. And so after we did a facilities condition assessment last year, it was determined that most of these buildings, it just so happens to be in this district, were the highest priority and had to be addressed immediately. And so, and which is why we have so many. And there's actually more than what you see here, but and it's citywide, but it just so happens these few are in the same district, essentially.
most of our community rec centers were built in the 60s. So, and none of them have had major improvements to them. The newest building in the city for community centers is the senior center, and that was in the 80s. So.
And then my second question is about Gateway Park Bridge. Is the bridge gonna be open during the replacement? Well, probably not, right?
Probably not. The replacement is actually, we're taking the bridge off of its foundation, putting a new one on. So it's quicker than you would imagine a bridge replacement would be. I mean, I won't speak for the contractor, but that's the idea, is the prefabrication is almost overnight. Don't quote me on that, but.
I already said it.
Thank you, that's it.
Wonderful, thank you. Commissioner Drap.
Thank you, Mr. Wu. So I think you answered a couple of questions, but I just want to make sure that I kind of understood it along the lines of the budget. Originally, I was going to ask, you mentioned two lines of funding. One was a 900K, one was an 850K grant, right? But then you also mentioned that that was just for phase 1, phase 2, and you projected it out to be $20 million. Did I follow that logic correctly?
Sort of. So I didn't mention all the funding opportunities,
Okay.
obviously. The 900K was to accomplish hopefully the first 2 phases with work toward the third phase. The third phase hasn't been defined yet, and so that's just what's projected. For typical resilience center and construction costs for facilities of this size, it was estimated to be about $20 million.
And you didn't mention, because 900K to 20 million is a big jump, you didn't mention all the funding sources that's gonna get us.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And the city is working toward not just for this facility, it's actually citywide improvements as well. And so the city's working on a plan for a long-term improvements for more than one facility. And so it's not just the $20 million, it will be hundreds of millions of dollars probably.
Okay.
So, and knowing how many facilities we have, we never have enough, honestly.
You mentioned that, I don't know if it was phase 1 or phase 2, I think with the pool, that after phase 1, you came across that the repairs were not what you needed them to be, or I could get this wrong. What I wrote down here, can you read my handwriting? Whatever came out of the phase 1 or phase 2, you're gonna have to redo, or now you're reassessing because, so what did we learn from our process of, coming out of that, spending that money to do it, and now we're coming out of it and we're gonna have to do something else?
Right. So for King, for example, phase 1 was successful enough where we're currently in the testing phase in order to develop what phase 2 is going to be. Testing phase, well, as you know, the pools are only used in the summertime, but in order to test it, we have to keep the pools up and running through the whole year. And so this winter time, if we survive this winter, for example, with nothing really breaking down or having any major issues, then phase 2 is pretty much a go, meaning that we can start developing the plan to make it additional improvements. So it could be to the building, it could be to the filtering system, it could be, something mechanical, or the pool itself. At Joinville, however, phase 1 was successful enough to open the pools for the summer. However, during the construction of phase 1, we did discover untraceable leaks in the pool itself. And it's not so much the pool leaking water, it's water leaking into the pool. And so it's a very strange phenomenon that would take another round of investigation to try to figure out. And
Sorry, why is it called untraceable if you were able to detect it?
we don't know where it's coming from.
Oh, I see.
It's coming up through a crack, for example.
Okay.
Where normally when pools crack, the water goes out, but for some reason the water's coming in.
So the level of water is going up?
If that were the only crack, there are other cracks in the pool where water's going out. And so it kind of balances itself out in a strange way.
Fascinating.
Yes. And so damage such as those require further investigation, and it'll help us determine whether we should move forward with phase 2 or not. Or unfortunately, maybe scrap the project. It all depends on how extreme it gets.
My last question is, I think you alluded to it, that you had mentioned design, but there is no design yet for, I don't know if it's phase 2 or phase 3, is that right?
It's actually, so is it referring to the Resilience Center or?
Yes, I think I wrote it under the resilience.
Right, so there's no design because we have to do a lot of legwork in advance to be able to gather information to be used forward for the design in the future. And so a lot of that information gathering could take about a year, given all the grant requirements.
Those were all my questions, thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. I only have a couple of questions. First, I just want to make sure, sometimes I'm kind of thick-headed. The 900K, is that to create the Resiliency Center just as a standalone project, turn King into a Resiliency Center? Or, and that's soup to nuts, the project, or is the 900K for a study to create a resiliency center?
So the 900K was for the two pools themselves to go through phase one, which is the immediate term fix. Phase two to have a 3 to 5 year fix, and then parts
Okay.
of phase three.
Got it.
So, and phase three for King includes the resiliency center. So to answer your question, parts of the 900K, not all of it, part of it would be used toward developing the scope for the resiliency center.
All right, and because I think it was in either March, I think it was March, we gave a positive feedback on recommending to city council that we spend 900,000 to, if I'm not mistaken, to create a resiliency center. Or was I mistaken as for what that was for? And again, I can be thick-headed.
Yeah, no, I think it gets confusing because we sometimes talk about the pool and the Martin Luther King Community Center as separate projects, even though they're the same building. So they are separate projects, but part of the same project. So the 900,000 was only for the pool portion with Joinville. So it's like we needed to do major repairs to the pools in order to get through the summers, and so that's what
Got
the 900,000 was for. Immediately.
Right now.
Right now,
Like,
yes, right now money, yes,
Because,
yeah, and it
summer's
worked,
coming.
yes, exactly, yeah.
all right, great. Last question. Is there any risk of the Joinville pool just being defunct completely? And we would have to tear out, rebuild?
Absolutely, that's definitely in the cards.
That's what I was hearing. I just wanted to make, again, I can be thick-headed and want to be really explicit about that. Right, and I'm not surprised about water coming in. You're down on old landfill and a water table that's could be getting pressure from the bay at high tide. So that would be a very difficult area to build a deep structure in that's watertight. Great. Any more questions or comments from the commissioners? If not, then let us move
I think
on.
we're supposed to go back to
Oh,
Mr. Jones.
I guess I was just wondering.
That is included in any more questions or comments.
I was just wondering how you determined like which like amenities / projects get like how do you decide which ones to prioritize?
Right, so we do have outside help. We have a outside consultant that has done a citywide condition assessment for all our facilities. And they help identify, it's really life safety first,
Mhm.
right? And so any buildings that have any major structural issues would be addressed on the priority list, would be put on the priority list. Structures that could change the environment on the inside, for example. So, for example, if City Hall had a huge hole in the roof, you know, and there was a temperature issue on the inside and people are uncomfortable, usually that becomes a priority. Probably not as extreme as something like that, but something like Gateway Bridge, for example, we determined that it was structurally compromised. And so for the long term, we realized we couldn't maintain it from a operations level. And so it becomes a capital project in that way. So we do have probably about 64 total capital projects themselves. These are aside from maintenance projects, but some of them were former maintenance projects. And because of the priority list or the prioritization, it was put on the capital improvements list and then bumped up to a certain priority list. And so typically our outlook is about 5 years for our capital program. And it changes every year depending on how conditions change, for example, or how much we use the buildings. But within those 5 years, there are priorities as well. And so it's almost a list within a list within a list.
Wow.
And so every July, when we allocate new funding for our CIP program, we basically take that as the highest priority. And that's the purpose, that's the reason why it's funded first.
Thank you.
The only other thing I would have you add is the upcoming study session for council.
Oh, yes,
If you could give some information about that.
yes. So I believe it's October
20th.
20th. There will be a council study session on the facilities condition assessment that was completed a little bit earlier this year. And it basically, what will be presented is essentially that priority list. You know, all the buildings in the city, what comes first, and what the city needs to basically look forward to in terms of immediate projects. So, is that
Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful, and that's sounds like a very interesting and important meeting.
yes, definitely.
Excellent. Any more questions, comments? If not, we can move on to new business. Item number 4 on the agenda, the annual parks survey. Kevin Kobayashi, Golf Services Manager.
Are you guys wondering why I'm doing the presentation?
Well, I am curious, but
Um,
we always like to
Golf.
see you.
well, I'm.
Golf is part of Park and Recreation.
I feel very honored because I get to speak to you now twice in the last couple of months. I think the last time I was here was in May.
Honored or tired?
No, I don't mind doing this at all. But my colleague Ron Hostic, who's our Parks and Landscape Manager, can be here today. And so I actually manage our visitor services program through our park rangers. So they're the ones that are usually patrolling the parks and helping out with issues that we have by the public. And also in 2019, 2020, I oversaw the parks division. So we were in transition for leadership in that particular position. And so I oversaw the parks. So that's why I'm doing. And also because Joanne told me to.
Adaptability.
Yes. Okay, so this first slide, just a little overview of the time frame for the survey. So from March 19th to June 30th, we had 660 respondents. This is pretty good in terms of what we've seen with respondents versus previous, not necessarily recently, but in previous times when I was overseeing parks, we actually had somebody out at the park with like a clipboard and asking people if they wanted to take part in the survey. And you can imagine that we just didn't really get a lot of takers. And so recently we've gone to an online where people can do it in the comfort of their home, scan QR codes. We generally get quite a bit better response doing it that way than having somebody in the park with a clipboard. So we had 660 in this particular survey, and we added a few open-ended questions that I'm going to go over in a little bit. Okay, so this particular slide, hopefully you can see just the demographics. So this particular slide just shows some of the age ranges and the percentage of people who responded, the actual physical number. We did ask a race or nationality question here, ethnicity, about who responded and the numbers there. And then down here, the languages spoken at home was also something that was asked. I do know that the majority of the people that responded probably took it in English, but it was also available in Spanish. So if you scan the QR code, you were able to take it in Spanish as well. I think a lot of this data really shows us too that if we see a huge influx in additional languages spoken at home, it really gives us the information to provide the survey in additional languages outside of English and Spanish. So this particular slide, first question, what parks do you visit most often? And the 3 top parks visited were the same this year as last year. So I think no surprise, Central Park, Beresford, and Seal Point Park. And we're gonna talk, or I'll talk a little bit about probably why these 3 parks are the most visited. Central Park, I think we can all agree, is the crown jewel, and that's the reason why most people visit that one. But there's a question in our survey that talks a little bit about some of the amenities that are most used in our parks. And these 2 particular parks that are not Central Park, so Beresford and Seal Point, have some of the amenities that a lot of our patrons said that they use a lot. And one of them is open space. So grass fields, Beresford obviously has a very, very large area for that. That also has one of probably our nicest picnic areas, the Beresford Shelter, and also has one of our community gardens. And then walking trails is another one that I'm gonna get into, and Seal Point Park obviously has that. They also have, our Seal Point also has probably our largest dog park as well. This one here talks a little bit about how often do we visit our parks, or do our patrons visit our parks. Almost daily and once or twice a week was 81% of our respondents. This particular slide also shows that thankfully that nobody said never. Surprisingly, if they didn't ever visit our parks, they probably wouldn't have known about the survey. But this really shows the importance of parks and how important of a role they play in a lot of our users. Question 3, what time of day do you typically visit the park? So the top 3 were pretty much 2:30 to 4:30, or 2:30, excuse me, to 5, 5 to 7, so in the evenings or afternoons, and then 9 to 11 a.m. That was the majority of our respondents. I will say that for our park rangers, this is particularly good information because it really shows us if we need to make some changes to our operation, hours of operation. We can kind of get a sense of when most people are in the parks. There's a slide that's going to be coming up where I'll talk a little bit about whether our park users who have filled out this survey, what types of employees that they've seen in our parks. And so with our park rangers, we want to make sure that they are visible. And if they're off shift when most people are visiting the parks, of course, they weren't seen. And so that's one of the data points that we like to look at. Question 4, what equipment amenities, if any, do you use most when you visit the parks? So I did talk about this a little bit earlier on the slide, but walking paths for walking or jogging was the majority, open space and grass areas, and then playgrounds. And so I'm sure we've talked a little bit about some of the projects that we have coming up in our parks. So project playground replacements at East Hillsdale and Central Park. And then also we have playground structures at Sunnybrae with replacement parts or upgrades. I know that when I was overseeing parks, we replaced a complete structure at Indian Springs because it had some termite damage. And so we're always prioritizing the playground structures as well to get those improved.
Sorry, can you just go back one?
Yeah.
I want to point out the restrooms point to my fellow commissioners, because I know many of our neighborhood parks don't have restrooms. It's feedback that we get from time to time, especially from older adults and also parents of young children, that even in the neighborhood parks, it would be nice if there were more restrooms. I know restrooms are expensive,
Yeah,
but it's interesting to just see restrooms as an identified amenity.
I can tell you that I have a young son, and when we go to our neighborhood park, the restroom in my town is a porta potty.
Yep.
And it's available to use. I will say that most of the time when we're evaluating whether to put an actual physical restroom in a neighborhood park versus a community park, we always have to take into account cleaning it and the cost associated with that. I know that when I was overseeing parks, we got a lot of requests to have restrooms installed at East Hillsdale and West Hillsdale Park. And it was really difficult to gain access to those, to clean them, if we were putting them in. And so we always are trying to evaluate these things, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
I just wanted to highlight that point.
Mhm.
Thank you.
City of San Mateo parks play an important role in my life. So strongly agree or agree was the majority, were 95% of the respondents said that. Strongly disagree and disagree, thankfully, we're not very many people.
Who are those people?
Yeah. We will talk a little bit about probably some of the amenities that they are potentially looking for, or the condition of the amenities in the park that maybe led to those responses. Question 6, City of San Mateo parks and facilities meet my physical access needs. 44.85% and 39.7% either strongly agreed or agreed, so 85% total. And this question did receive similar responses, with nearly 85% responding that they agreed that our local parks and facilities met their physical access needs. There is another slide coming up that we're going to talk a little bit about ADA accessible things. And I think that maybe there was some confusion about access and how the general public viewed that question that we asked. So this new question here, are there specific features or accommodations that would make our parks more accessible for you or for your family members? And amongst accessibility related comments, better ground conditions, improved walking paths, and playground enclosures. So in this particular case, I think there were some responses that we were trying to also maybe focus on ADA accessible items. I know some of our parks have what's called port in place. And if you're not familiar with port in place, it's a flooring underneath our playground structures that make it a lot easier to access all of the features of the playground if you're in a wheelchair. A lot of our parks have what's called FIBAR, and back in the day we used to call tan bark. But those are that condition makes it very, very difficult to access the playground structures and all the amenities that are available if you're ADA challenged. I will say that our park maintenance is a lot more difficult trying to clean up the FIBAR than a port in place. So park equipment and amenities are well maintained. 66 respondents agreed that the equipment and amenities were well maintained. So this is a little bit lower than I would like to see. And I think for us, our process to replace playground equipment is improved quite a bit since maybe I was overseeing it, which was we were having one department that really didn't have the expertise in what we needed doing the entire process from start to finish. So ordering the product, waiting for it to come in, and then installing it. Now we are more, our parks maintenance staff and our parks landscape manager are doing all of the equipment ordering, and then our public works staff are the ones that are doing the installation. So the process has improved quite a bit. Park landscaping is well maintained, question number 9. So 83% agreed that the park landscaping is well maintained. I will say that our park staff probably does as good a job of any of the parks that I've been to in various cities. We have a very, very good staff. I can say that we're pretty much fully staffed now.
Yes.
And Ron Hostick and Ryan have been here for quite a while. So their ability to kind of create a team is they've done really, really well since they've been here. So question 10, I feel safe in City of San Mateo Park. So this picture is 3 of our park rangers. Emily in the middle there is our merit staff, and then Connor and Khaleesi. So these are employees that I manage, and 87% of our respondents agreed that they feel safe in our parks. I think a lot of concerns that they have are exactly what our rangers deal with. So alcohol consumption, unhoused population, and then unleash or dogs off leash are probably our 3 biggest concerns for people's safety in our parks. Our ranger team They are great at being able to respond to these things. We do have a ranger cell phone that you can call or anybody can call. It goes directly to the ranger on duty. We have a new phone system that we are improving that if you call the ranger station, it actually will forward to our phone if nobody answers, the ranger cell phone if nobody answers it. So we also have an additional truck that we added, thanks to Joanne, that now our rangers can be in 2 different places at once when we have 2 rangers on staff. So before we only had 1 truck, it was just kind of difficult to get to multiple locations. And then we do work with our rangers, work with our HOT team, which is our homeless outreach team, that is part of our police department. And so if there's ever any situation in a park where it's maybe a little bit out of our rangers' ability to deal with on their own, we have a lot of resources here in the city to kind of help them deal with some of these things that really I think the public would deem as unsafe conditions. So this new question number 11, please provide more information regarding your experience in our parks that has led you, your feelings regarding safety. So the majority of our responses related to what I just mentioned, that drug and alcohol use, and then in the increase in unhoused population in parks. And also with the dog off leash, one of the questions that always comes up, I think in some of our other presentations that we do, is what do patrons do about dogs off leash? And then when our rangers respond, the people who have the dogs off leash say, oh, my dog is very friendly, it's never bitten anybody. That's generally the response they get. But I do think that there's a lot of users, park users, that just don't feel very comfortable when there's dogs off leash, no matter how big or small the dog is. And so that's always the information, or at least the messaging that we give to people, is we have very, very specific areas that we want people to use when their dogs are off leash. But if they're in one of our parks that does not have a fenced in area, we expect you to always have your dogs on leash. And question 12, have you ever seen one of the following parks and recreation staff members while visiting the park? So I just alluded to this a little bit earlier, where 72% say they've seen a maintenance worker, 41% have seen a park ranger. And again, this is kind of coincides with the time that the people are in the parks. We've done a really, really good job of making sure that our maintenance workers are always uniformed consistently with each other. So they have a very specific uniform with a patch. They wear very specific headwear. And it's really to make sure that they're identifiable and that they all look like a cohesive team. I think a lot of times when I see employees at any location and everybody's just kind of wearing something different, it just doesn't show as much professionalism as what we'd like to have with our parks and park maintenance crew. And I do think that that is part of the reason why this number is as high as it is because they're very, very easily identifiable when they're there. Question 13, what would you like to see more of in our parks? 47% said shade structures, 44 water bottle filling stations, and then playgrounds, restrooms, and dog off-leash areas were kind of similar in that respect. With shade structures, I do remember a lot of requests to have shade structures. I think we were always trying to assess the cost of a artificial shade structure versus planting trees. And I think you had asked about an arborist. Our arborist, who we have in our department, is always looking for new locations to replace trees, to plant trees. And I think we would probably agree that having a tree as a shade structure is a lot more conducive to the park environment than having an artificial shade structure. So those are things that we're always kind of considering. And placement of trees around park benches. I do know that when I'm sitting in just direct sunlight with no shade, it doesn't need to be that warm outside, and it just makes it very, very uncomfortable. So we're always looking for ideal places to plant trees for shade structures. Question 14, do you have any additional feedback or suggestions regarding our parks and recreation facilities? So the top comments were related to overall improvements in maintenance, playground updates and improvements, and shade both in form of trees and other structures. So a lot of times, the information from the survey really helps us determine what decisions we make in terms of how we maintain our parks, or how we install new structures, or what we do when we need to make improvements in our parks. So I'll close out with a couple of the projects that were requested were more pickleball, and I'm sure you guys have heard more than your fair share of wanting to hear about pickleball, but more pickleball.
No, we'd love to hear more.
And then more dog space in our downtown area. I think the Central Park the Central Park area traditionally hasn't had an off-leash dog area, and I think that's been something that we've been probably going back and forth on what would be an ideal location for an off-leash dog area in the downtown area.
Wonderful. Kevin, thank you very much. That was a great presentation.
Thank you.
Really informative, and I love the annual survey. Public comment. We'll close public comment, questions and comments from commissioners. I'll start to my left with Commissioner Trapp this time.
How many years have we done this survey?
At least as long as I've been here. And so I started in 2018. I'm sure we did it even before that. I think we started more of the online part after COVID. I think we were probably forced to do it that way, but when we realized that we were getting such a great response by allowing people to do it from the comfort of their own home, we just kind of continued that. But we for sure did it since I've been here.
Is there a trend? Do you look at the data from 2018 until today to see how it's changed?
I don't know exactly what the trend has been. I know that consistently the positive feedback has outweighed the negative when it comes to the perception of safety in our parks, the condition and the maintenance of the landscaping. It's been very, very positive.
So the channels by which that we administer the survey, I know you said it was in person, but now online is that the only channel? I mean, what means do you put out the marketing for people?
Yeah, so I know it's posted on our social media, on our website, city's website. We have QR codes on poster boards in our parks, and then I think we just through word of mouth as well. It's probably in our rec guide as well.
Yeah, we put it in the rec guide this year, and that's why the dates of the survey changed in order to make sure we could get it, and it was on the back cover so that we could get the word out a little bit more to our user group. And then we also advertised in the citywide e-newsletter that goes out on a regular basis. And this year we had our act together a little bit more than years past. And so the survey was available for a longer span of time. Although it didn't garner as many responses. We have to give annual updates in our reports required by the city manager. And in order to get that information to them in the fiscal year, we need to do the survey sooner than we have been in the past. And so that's why the dates changed. But I think you have more users in the parks that see that the survey is available to take. And so we expect that might be the reason why we had a few less respondents this year as opposed to last year. We had over 700 respondents last year and we had 660 this year. But the years prior to that, we had around 200 to 250. So it jumped quite a bit in the last 2 years, I think, with many of the marketing efforts that we're making.
And do you have to end date? You couldn't have it a year-round survey?
It's just helpful to have a start and an end so that we can push it and then we can analyze the data and put it together for our annual report. Certainly that's something we can consider and talk about to have it more ongoing. Yeah.
I think that was all my questions because you answered it by having a year over year. So that's fine. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Chiappi.
Thank you, Kevin, for your presentation. I think it was really informative. And I also wanna commend the department for annually conducting this survey and actually learning from it, I recall from last year, and then improving upon it. I think that's really commendable. One question I have is a scenario question. Supposing a community member came up to me or to you and told you that they recently had hip replacement surgery and now they're learning to walk again, which park would you recommend to them to walk in?
I was not expecting a tough question.
This is an accessibility question.
I would probably recommend Central Park just because of the different pathways that have access to multiple restrooms, multiple benches. And it's the flattest park that I would say for someone having, to make sure that, they're not having to deal with hills and things of that nature. But I think that there are so many different access points around Central Park. I think that would be my recommendation. It's a great question.
All set?
So I guess I'm thinking, and I don't know if this is something the city can consider in the future, is to upgrade one of the parks to with people with disabilities, physical disability in mind. Because I know that a lot of them don't use the parks because of, the ground is not level and they don't feel safe on unstable ground. So I know that may be a smaller section of the population, but it would really help with their community inclusion aspect of their integration.
Yeah, I think from now being a park and rec director in 3 different cities and managing different parks, I think the biggest challenge with park pathways is the materials that are utilized. It's usually asphalt, which doesn't lend itself to being the smoothest, easiest surface to navigate. And then tree roots definitely impact asphalt pathways. And so I think that what we're trying to do and make a concerted effort to do is when we have the budget and the ability to put concrete pathways in wherever we can in order to make it a smoother surface for people to access. Certainly accessibility was considered and inclusivity wasn't considered in the upgrades made at Central Park. So I think that will be a nice amenity that maybe we haven't seen in all of our other parks. And then I just want to commend the commission. The 2 questions that were added were a result of your feedback from last year. So hopefully that you see the fruits of your labor incorporated into the survey. So we appreciate it.
Wonderful. Vice Chair Ocampo.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kevin. Love the questions and thank you for integrating those couple questions that came out of our feedback last year. Just curious, I mean, it was in the demographics, it was pretty obvious that there was very high amount of English speakers and very low amount of Spanish speakers at home. Why do we think that is and how can we increase that for the next survey that we have?
So we did a lot of signage as well in Spanish in order to try and increase Spanish speaking population to engage. The survey is translatable into Spanish. So I think we're making small strides, but I think we need to figure out a better way to engage and support that process. So any suggestions that you have, we're more than open to.
We could think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And just curious, Kevin, did any of the open-ended questions on accessibility and safety reveal any recurring themes that surprised staff?
I don't know of any. No, I don't.
I think the only one that surprised me was that there was significant feedback about a slide at Harbor View, which was helpful. So I think that the timeframe associated with the replacement of a broken slide was something that the community that provided the feedback. So that was something that was not necessarily on my radar. That was helpful to see.
And also the shade structures, I know that that's obviously been a feedback for a while now. Have we ever considered something that's a little bit more eco-friendly, but then of course we'd probably have to replace it a little bit more often, like those sails, those shade sails?
Yeah, I know when I was looking at the cost of those, the upfront cost is very, very high. And like anything that is artificial, it does need to be usually replaced. I think even the shade structures, the material, especially during windstorms, can get damaged. And so trying to find replacement parts or pieces to it. And then also fading was also a concern of ours. And so we always just try to analyze all those things before we just go out and buy something. I do remember a very, very specific shade structure that looked really, really great, but it was very, very expensive. And so to put it in after the fact, it didn't always go with the play structure that was there, as opposed to buying it when you were putting in the playground all at once.
The other thing is we did plant 100 trees in parks this year. So to help increase, and we're strategic by benches.
There's a lot of
So, yeah,
trees this
yeah,
year.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was great.
we lost a lot of trees a couple of years ago due to the winter storms, especially at the golf course. So it's been a challenge to kind of keep up with the pace, but we were intentional this year based on some of the feedback that we received from the survey last year.
It's very obvious. There's a ton of trees out there right now with the sticks and everything, the stakes, yeah. Thank you, Kevin. Is that right?
Right. Commissioner Fields.
Thank you. I was surprised about the safety statistics in one of the slides. I don't remember which slide number it was. I'm happy to hear that the Rangers are partnering with Dave and Victoria, with our homeless outreach team embedded in SMPD. They go through excellent work, and I'm happy to hear about that. I did wonder in question 13, which I did note was slide 16, there were several additional, if you could pull up the slide, there were several like options listed. I was curious if the options that were listed in that slide, were those the only options that people could select from? Or were there other options that just kind of didn't make the popularity cut?
So this is question 13.
Yes.
I believe there were more
Okay.
options.
So there were less popular options. Okay.
These were
These were the
Top
top, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So again, I just want to point out restrooms did make it. I just want, like, I'll say this, like, when I hear often from friends and neighbors about restrooms, so I just want to lift it up, that's a recurring theme. I also just want to lift up that what motivates dog park and off-leash dog areas is exactly what you described, which is that there isn't necessarily agreement or alignment around what people should be doing with their dogs in public. And that's also something that I hear quite a bit about. I know that there's certain parks that have sort of informal off-leash hours. I'm sure the Rangers don't love that. But any ways we can formalize, you can be off-leash with your dog in a particular area, and then really trying to encourage, more use of leashes in parks where that's not permissible. Because I think, beyond just the sensitivities around comfort, there's also some cultural differences around how people approach dogs that we want to be sensitive to as well, and making sure that the parks are really accessible to everyone.
Yeah. I would just say, particularly at Beresford, the big open lawn space, I think people go out there and they see nobody's out here, I'm gonna let my dog off leash.
Yep.
Well, that prohibits other people from coming into the area because they don't want. So we've increased our signage. We put out some lawn signage recently at that location, and we've increased our passing checks by rangers so that they can be out there and informing and educating. The field, Chantelope Field, is available as a dog off leash area from 6 to 8 a.m. every day. So people can utilize that space. The challenge is people want to have their dogs off leash at different times of day, and it's not always available at those locations. The other thing that I will mention, and the number 2 item up here that we get a lot of feedback about, is our water bottle filling stations. And so we have been making a concerted effort to install those when we can, when we have the opportunity. And we always try and look at the ones that have the water bottle filling and the dog bowl feature to cover everyone. And we've recently installed a new water fountain at Sunnybray, and it triggered some upgrades that needed to be made, ADA accessibility upgrades for that relocation of the water bottle filling station. But we are making those efforts as well, and this feedback helps with that as well.
Great. And then just one last question, in the question 14, that sort of, I think was an open-ended question, where we got a variety of points of feedback. I wrote down specific sports, and then you mentioned pickleball. Were there any other specific rec activities or sports mentioned? You kind of gave us the top sort of broad list, but were there any other specific sports mentioned in this question? Do you know?
I don't remember
Okay.
if there were. I know that probably, at least my experience recently overseeing pickleball and tennis,
Mhm.
is that the pickleball players and tennis players are the most vocal.
Yes.
But I don't remember seeing anything else, but I will say that they're very passionate about their sport.
Indeed, they are.
And so when I was overseeing it, we certainly got a lot of feedback about the pilot program that's over at Beresford.
Mhm.
And so,
Us too.
yeah. So that's probably why it rose to the top of the list, because they're definitely very, very passionate about
Okay.
pickleball.
Well, and they continue to give us feedback about other locations
Yes.
where they'd like to see improvements. The only other thing that I'll mention as far as security in parks, we've also recently purchased several cameras to be installed at different parks across the city, ones that we get the most calls for service. We have vandalism at our parks, so we're hoping that the installation of these cameras help serve as a deterrent and a resource, again, because we do have such limited staffing in our park ranger program. And that those are accessible by the police department and part of the Arctic, the real-time information crime center.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Commissioner Jelniker.
Thank you. I have one clarifying question. On one of the slides, it said, I think it was slide 12, I believe. It was regarding like, how often do you see XYZ staff in the parks? I was just curious, what is a recreation director or
Recreation director looks like.
recreation?
A recreation leader,
Yes,
yes. So our parks that have community centers attached to them
Mhm.
will have rec staff in them. And they're not always necessarily out in the park, but a lot of times when our programming is happening on one of the fields, those staff members are out there.
Mm.
A lot of times our programming is really kind of focused around school time. And so during the middle of the day, the staff isn't going to be necessarily in the park, but they are staffed inside of the recreation center.
During the summer, there's
Oh,
quite a few
yeah,
more
like
people
summer
because we have
camp
summer camps in the park,
people,
but
yeah.
yeah, during the regular year, not so much.
There's no like Joanna Sightons, just.
Rarely.
Joanne was just
Rarely.
Holographic AI, Joanne.
And I was just curious, what do you, with that one question, what do you do with that information exactly? I'm just curious.
About whether they see.
Yes, that one. like-
So it really kind of coincides with the time of days
Mhm.
or the time of day that our users are
Oh,
most frequently in the parks. So if we were to say most people were in the parks in the late evenings, we would then try to tailor some of our staff to change their schedule a little bit. So specifically with the park rangers, our maintenance staff really is gonna be there from the morning until the early afternoon. But really, we wanna make sure that if people are seeing our staff in the park, it means that we're there maintaining them, that they feel comfortable that city staff are there. And specifically with the rangers, if they are noticing them, it usually gives them some awareness that we're monitoring what's going on in the parks so that people feel safe. And so specifically, I think we talked a little bit about the dog off leash situation. There's really a lot of park users that have their dogs off leash because they feel very confident that their dogs aren't going to do anything to somebody else.
Right.
I will tell you that I have had dogs my entire life, and even when I visit parks, if there's a big dog off leash with my 8-year-old, I don't like going over there and in and around that area just because I don't know what it's capable of doing. And so that's really what our park rangers are there for, is if somebody is concerned, they call the park rangers and somebody can then respond and inform the people who have dogs off leash that, hey, this is not because we don't think your dog is safe. It's we want to make everybody feel safe when they're visiting our parks.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Great. Kevin, again, thank you very much for a great presentation. I just have a couple comments, a couple questions. I think quite a bit has been said about dogs, and I echo all of those. I'm a longtime dog owner, dog lover, and you can never predict. You just can't. They're dogs. And so I think we're all aligned on that. Another comment, I noted two things of particular interest in your presentation. First, the age distribution. The majority of the respondents were millennials and Gen X, and the baby boom is growing on. And I note that in the context of the greatest expressed needs or wants, which are shade and water. So this is not senior citizens who feel, it's hot, I'm uncomfortable. These are parents with families. These are young people in their 20s who are saying, we need more shade, we need more water. And
Millennials are in their 30s and 40s now.
the millennials are
I'm a millennial.
just got 30. They just did this year become 30. As I constantly have a discussion with my 30-year-old daughter who says, no, I'm not a millennial. So yes, you are. You just made it into the water, under the line. And I think that need's just gonna grow. Things are getting warmer. That just is the way it is. I am a huge advocate of trees. Trees grow and they can grow really big. This is a fantastic climate for trees. So the more, the better. Questions, I'll try to make it fast to tie it into one question. It was fantastic that you took our input from last year, and I definitely noticed that. Beauty online survey, easy to modify. Is it possible to get into a little bit more resolution on a couple of areas? So take, for instance, there was a large group that, or I should say it was like 15% in the disagree and strongly disagree on structures are well maintained. And I'm wondering, does that come from one specific park or even one specific structure in a park? Because I think it was like 20 or 30 respondents. And just for future reference, if there were a way to get a little more granularity. And another point of granularity is, as you all know, I'm a huge fan of the Japanese garden. It is an unbelievable place. It is a spiritual and sacred place for many people. I lived in Japan for a year. That's legit. It is the real deal and incredibly hard to find anywhere in a 5-hour drive of here. Is there any way that we can break out the Japanese garden inside of Central Park? Just to see how many people are visiting it. And I'll use that as a for instance in the context of, can we get more granularity in this already powerful and informative survey?
So you're asking if we can add maybe an additional question about how often you specifically visit the Japanese garden as opposed to just Central Park.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so something like that, is that logistically, feasible to do in the survey without creating a lot of work?
Yes.
Okay, great. And I'll close with an anecdote. So I said I can be very thick-headed, and I sent Joanne a question yesterday or the day before asking, is there any way that you could put a link to the survey in the activities guide? Because it would be great if people don't have to scan a QR code at the park. And she laughed, and you should laugh because I'm quite laughable.
That was a great
It
suggestion.
wasn't a good suggestion
Such a good suggestion.
that y'all time traveled back and did it and got responses. Now, what I did, I looked at the first 5 or 6 pages and I was looking, okay, I'm a guy, I was looking for a QR code. So I got to the refrigerator, but I could not see what I was looking for inside it.
Happens.
And yeah, with me, it does happen. So I thought I'd share that anecdote. You are long-suffering and patient.
I do want to mention, we do, I'll have to look at the raw data that we get back from the survey because I don't exactly recall, but I think the people that provide open-ended responses, we can potentially tie that to the people that disagree with the maintenance. So it could be that the
Yeah,
5
so-
people about the specific slide also disagreed with the maintenance. So we may already have that information. It's just, we may just have to dive a little deeper into looking at the correlation.
It
So-
also, if I may offer a theory,
Mm.
be that it's not really that we're not doing a good job of maintenance, but because there are so many pieces of equipment that have
Lived past their life cycle.
have enjoyed an extended
Yes,
life.
correct.
There is
Yeah.
an assumption that we're not doing maintenance in the ways that we should, when really it's that, like, I don't know, I think about Concar Park right down the street from me, where it's like the playground equipment's just kind of old. Like, there's a lot of things within the park system and our recreation centers that just feel a little bit dated, and I wonder if some of that is influencing this
And-
response.
I'm sure.
And that's where,
Yeah.
if it is possible for you to take down or to
Prescribed,
do a feasible
Yeah.
upgrade or redesign, then you can zero in on it and say, oh yeah, was it what, Bayside? That had the structures that you thought?
For the slide or
Harborview,
Harborview?
Oh yeah, well, that's
Yeah.
wooden structures right on the water with a lot of sand
Yeah,
that I
yeah,
can see.
Yeah. Good feedback. Thank you.
All right,
Question.
please go ahead.
The slide with the demographics on it, how is that reflective of the population of San Mateo? Is that
That's a
one
good
to
question.
one, or,
Mm,
you understand my question?
Yeah, I understand. I don't know the correlation between how people responded and what they chose to select as their ethnicity and what our demographic looks like in San Mateo.
We do have surveys that they do for the city so that we can compare it to that data to see if it's,
I'd like
similar.
to see like what is the, if we are Native Hawaiian is 3% of our population, but we're getting a less than 1% of responses. Is there something outreach or something we can do more of to get this in line with what our
What the demographic is of the city. Yeah.
Like closer to 1-for-1.
Yeah, that's good feedback. Thank you.
All right, we all set? Great. Final item, reports and announcements. I will be going to the dinner tomorrow night.
Hopefully everyone will be. I will be quick. We will be canceling our upcoming meeting on October 1st due to floor. And we'll be sending an email, but we're proposing Tuesday, October 7th at 7 p.m. Same place. So we'll be sending an email to you all to determine if we can have a quorum for that meeting. Our fall classes and programs have started, but it's not too late to register. So if anybody's still interested, registration is still available. Our construction fencing went up yesterday at East Hillsdale Park. And so that shovel is in the ground, as they say. Upcoming events, Movies in the Park start this Friday, and will be every Friday in September. The first one is Shrek at Central Park. And then we have September Nights on B happening on B Street on September 11th and 18th from 6 to 8 p.m. with live music. And we are partnering with the Police Activities League to do the bike rodeo. And that will be on September 26th from 5 to 6:30 at Beresford Park before the movie in the park. So we're kind of doing a tandem event, trying to kill two birds with one stone. And so that will be,
What is a bike rodeo?
funny you should ask.
There's bike roping, there's bike jumping.
Well, yeah, is there?
Yeah, no. So there's a bike course to teach kids how to navigate riding their bike.
Is it only for children?
Yeah, it's not only for children, it's for children and adults. We will have a bike ride as part of the event. There'll be a raffle. We give away 2 bikes. And bike helmets, how to repair your bike, all kinds of things associated with being safe on your bike and repairing your bike. That's a great name, actually. Central Bark. Central Bark. Central Bark was super successful. It was very well attended and it was a beautiful day. Yeah. Lots of dogs on leash.
So important.
Yeah.
All right. If there's nothing else, then this meeting is closed.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, staff.
See you all again tomorrow.